Hi there, Steve Kaufman. I want to talk about juggling languages or using modern technology to learn languages the way I couldn't have done 50 years ago. I am focused on three languages: Korean, Ukrainian, and Russian. Korean because I want to improve my Korean. I've dabbled in it so much, and yet I'm still not where I want to be. Korean, or at least Ukrainian, I'm basically where I want to be. I understand 80%, so I will gradually understand more and more. And Russian, it's more a matter of following things of interest to me. But I am spending time on these three languages primarily. What do I do and how do I do it? It's interesting because I think it's an indication of what modern technology makes possible. So let's start with Korean. With Korean, I have in my system easier content that we have at our library at Link and so forth, but I don't find it interesting. That easy content I can understand. I also have on my little iPod Nano in Korean, I have a bunch of sort of basic phrases, a book that I mentioned before that I bought in Japan with CD, hundreds of little phrases in Korean that I've listened to many, many times to give me a sense of the basic structure. You can only listen to those for so much and then they get uninteresting. And when the interest dies, you stop learning. I refer again to the comment in Manfred Spitzer's book called something about the brain and learning. The brain needs repetition, but the brain needs novelty. It has to be interesting. So I can no longer listen to those basic Korean phrases. I can no longer listen to the easy content in our library. So I have found now a new podcast, not Kim Young-ha, which is on literature and which is sometimes too difficult, but one on current events, Shisatong. So I go to Shisatong, I download their podcast, it's 40, 50 minutes long. I have now gone to the same transcriber who transcribed Kim Young-ha's podcast on literature, and she has started transcribing these for me. Right now I have one 40-minute podcast, which I have divided into 10 or 12-minute segments. I listen, don't understand, or understand very little. Then I read it on my computer, because there I have access to the Naver dictionary. I can look up the meaning. I can look up the characters, the Chinese characters if available. I put those into Link, and then I go away and I read this on my iPad. Now, the iPad, our Link app in iPad, has the advantage that we can look at it sentence by sentence. See if I can get this. The sentence changes every time I touch the button. And it remembers where I am, because even a 10 or 12 minute text in Korean, for me, it's still quite difficult. And I prefer to read it sentence by sentence, and it remembers where I am. And then I'll work my way through the 40 minutes worth of text. And I've been listening to this text quite a few times, not really understanding much. But the more I read, the better I understand. So I listen on my iPod Nano. I work through them on my iLink, on my iPad, reading. But because we're down here in Palm Springs, and my wife likes to play golf, she likes to shop, so I'm often with her. Either I'm waiting at the golf course for the people to, tee off, or I'm waiting in a store. So then, on my iPhone, I can review the flashcards, which is an activity that, if I have dedicated study time, I really don't like doing flashcards. But if I am just standing around, then, I can do my flashcards, and that's a great way to do it. And the way I do flashcards is I put the Korean term, the translation, and the link captured phrase all in the front. I don't challenge myself to try to remember it. I just go through them, and it's just another form of exposure. So I use those three things. One other thing I do, I discovered this little Bluetooth loudspeaker. It's this big, so very often, like when we're having dinner here, I will play some music from my iPhone, or from my iPod Nano. But my wife certainly doesn't want to listen to Korean while we're eating. Anytime I'm listening to Korean or Russian or Ukrainian, I put on my earphones. And of course, nowadays you have Bluetooth earphones like these that I bought that are just phenomenal. But if I'm going to have a bath or something, or if I'm doing exercises, here I ruined my back, so I've got to do these back exercises 3 times a day. It's just as easy to throw this down and listen while doing those exercises. So, I mean, look at the technology. We got the iPod Nano, we got iPad, not to mention the computer, iPhone for flashcards, this for casual listening, all using Bluetooth technology. By the way, where do the flashcards come from? The flashcards come from the words that I have saved, which I save on the computer, which are then highlighted in yellow, so that, you know, when I read them on my iPad, you know, I can just touch them and see what the meaning is and all this kind of stuff. So, so with Korean, that's the routine. Now with Ukrainian, if I listen to Shisatong, I understand 10, 15, 20%. With Ukrainian, I understand, depending on the context, 85%. But there's still words there that I want to learn. So with Korean, or at least with Ukrainian, I download podcasts from, most frequently from Hromadske Radio. And they're very interesting interviews there. There, they don't offer transcripts. However, I also go to Radio Svoboda, where they will occasionally have an interview with a transcript. So I will download those. But I also import a lot of content, as I've said before, from Ukrainian Pravda, from wherever I can find it, or references that I get on my Twitter feed, and I read through those and save words and phrases on the computer or on the iPad. With Ukrainian and Russian, I can do all of the linking on the iPad because I'm not looking to get, you know, Chinese characters or anything like that. The dictionary works fine on the iPad. So with Ukrainian, I guess I do a little more reading than listening, but a bit of both. With Russian, I basically just listen because 95% I get. There's the odd word that I don't get. If I'm really interested, then I will import the text from Echo Moskvy, where, as I've said before, you always have transcript with audio, a tremendous source. Right now, there's some pressure on Echo Moskvy, which is, to my mind, quite unfair because you can find a number of different political positions at Echo Moskvy, people who support the government, who oppose the government, and it's all there, audio with transcript, tremendous resource for Russian learners. So that's how I use all this different stuff. And the way I listen, of course, differs. If I'm listening to the Korean where I understand 10, 15, 20%, I am motivated because I'm trying to understand more. And now I clearly hear the words, but they're words that I don't yet know. Or they're words that, in fact, I do know, but I'm not able yet to recognize them when I hear them. Whereas I do understand when I read, because any missing words I can look up by, you know, touching the screen, and so the whole context is clearer. And as I continue working this Shisatong podcast that I've had transcribed, I will eventually get to where I understand it when it's spoken. By that time, my transcriber will have another podcast done for me, and I continue the process. When I listen to Ukrainian or Russian, I'm essentially listening for the meaning. I'm interested in the events in Ukraine. I'm interested in hearing different opinions. So I'm just listening or reading for interest, and in that process, gradually improving my skills. Now, I do dabble in some other languages. Just if someone, for example, on my Twitter feed sends me to an interesting article in German, and I've done so little work on link in German, in some ways my vocabulary in Russian is better than my vocabulary in German, although I speak German better than Russian. So I'll grab the article, put it on link, and save the blue words, the unknown words, and gradually kind of putting stuff away in my German area for, you know, it's just part of keeping that alive. And particularly recently in Prague, where there were some events surrounding statements made by their president and some demonstration against the president, I've been reading some articles in Czech, and also reactivated my subscription or my RRS feed to Český rozhlas and listened to a discussion about politics in Czech Republic. But that's very much minor. But again, I was doing that in Czech while having a bath, and I was listening to it on my little Bluetooth portable speaker. So there you have it, running through. So getting back to this listening thing, just before I finish, to me, listening is tremendously powerful in terms of language learning, and never has it been easier than today. When I listen to things that I don't understand, I am motivated to try to pick out, notice more and more of it, but I like to eventually get to a transcript. So I will listen to, say in the case of Korean, some content for which there is no transcript, but eventually I reach a dead end. I've listened to it a few times, I've picked out a few more words, but I'm not understanding any more of it. In order to progress, I've got to get a transcript. So that's Korean. But I am motivated. One other thing, people wonder about, don't you sort of fade in, fade out? Of course I do. You can't be 100% focused. The other thing is, I don't listen as a dedicated activity. I think I would fade out more if I did. If I have dedicated learning time, I read, I save links. Listening is when I am doing other things, and there, sure, you fade in and out, but it's all exposure to the language. So with material where you don't understand much, you're listening to try to grasp the definitions, not the definitions, but the delimitation between words, pick up the odd word, but ultimately I want to get to a transcript. When I'm listening to material where I understand 70, 80, 90%, I'm listening for enjoyment. But even there, if I can get to a transcript and pick up those words that I'm missing, save them, now they're going to be showing up in yellow when I subsequently read. Eventually they'll be part of my, at first, passive vocabulary and possibly, eventually, active vocabulary. So there you have it, juggling languages in the modern language learning environment. I hope that's useful, and I look forward to your questions. Bye for now.